Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the PBB BB21 5x5 NRP 613. This is a hinge that is a particular hinge. First of all, I'm always impressed with the packaging from PBB. And I know from actual experience, they take very guardful pride over their finishing process when it comes specifically to oil rubbed bronze. Very heavy caliber plastic bag that's here that's going to serve to isolate this hinge from all other pieces. This is oil rubbed bronze. This is a oil rub bronze is what's called a living finish. Oil rub bronze is a finish that's going to change with time, hence the term living finish. I would not suggest that you order oil rubbed bronze if you are expecting something that will be a stable finish, something that will kind of stay the same color, because oil rubbed is not that. It is a hand process done over 613 is a hand process done over solid architectural bronze. It inherently means that with time it is going to evolve, it is going to lighten. There will be hints of the base material that will come through eventually. That's going to happen for sure. And that's exactly why people will order this. One hinge compared to the next when it comes to oil rub bronze is going to physically look different. There will be no two that are the same. That's why people order oil rubbed. That's why this client ordered oil rub, because that's what they want. They want it to be able to evolve with time. Now, the BB and the part, let's dissect the part number. The BB stands for ball bearing. This is a standard weight hinge, and that means that there's going to be 2 bearing packets on a standard weight hinge. That means in a 5x5, this is going to be 140 thousandths thick. Let's take a look. I was close. 146 thousandths is what the caliper should measure, should tell us when we measure this leaf thickness. So that means it's heavy. It's heavier than 1/8 of an inch. 146 thousandths. My caliper's telling me 1.51. 1.51. I am sure as a result of the manufacturing process that the very edge of this, if we had a magnifying glass, is probably turned out a little bit. But 1.46 is what this ought to measure. I'm coming up with 151 when I measure it. So this is a standard weight hinge. Now they can do a heavy weight, which would be 190 thousandths. It'd be the same hinge otherwise, just much heavier, but it would give you 4 bearing packets. That would be a 4B21. This is a BB21. The 21 in the part number differentiates it from its sister products by the base material. They will make a BB 5x5 standard weight hinge in solid brass bronze, which is a 21. The 51, a BB 51, would be the same hinge made of stainless steel. The BB 81 would be the same hinge made of steel. And obviously the finishes available to you on those different base materials are directly related to the base material itself. So if you were doing an oil rubbed bronze finish on a BB 81 versus a BB 21, not only will it be a different code, it would be a 640 finish if it was on steel, but it's going to look different. Oil rubbed always looks different, but oil rubbed over bronze versus oil rubbed over steel, it's a different look, obviously. If you want true oil rubbed, you're going to want to order material made of architectural bronze as a base material. Okay. Moving through the part number, we have a 5x5. That's the size. You can certainly do a solid bronze hinge from PBB in lots of different sizes. Your 3.5, 3.5, 4x4, 5x5. I know that they have shipped me 6x6 in the past. They can do technically any size, probably certainly up to 8x8. But those lead times on those really epically unusual hinges are going to be long, to say the least. Now in a 5x5 hinge, the height is the first dimension. The width is the second dimension. May not matter to you. You might say to yourself, well, I don't care. It's a square hinge. It's a 5x5. Both dimensions are 5 inch. Well, that's true. However, you know how a door is wide and then tall? Well, hinges are height and then width, so they're backwards. It matters if you're talking about a hinge that's rectangular, like maybe a 4.5 by 6 or a 5 by 4.5. You need to know the height is the first dimension. It's important to note that because you can not understand it. You can order your doors and frames prepped incorrectly as a result of thinking that hinges are measured out the same way that doors are. They're not. The height of the hinge is pretty important because that's directly related to the capability of the hinge. And what I mean by that is onto a hinge that's 5-inch tall, or maybe 6-inch tall, or maybe 4.5-inch or 4-inch tall is directly related to its ability to hang a load, to carry a load. A great application of a 5-inch hinge can be a 5 by 4.5 when you have an 1.75-inch door, by certainly the most common thickness of door, but it's unusually heavy or wide. You'll see specifications if you get it into contract work. When the door is wider than 3 foot, they want 5-inch tall hinges, period. And that's because it's a heavier door. It's a wider door. A lot more happening. And in fact, 70% of the weight of the door is carried on the top hinge only. So that's why you'll see a taller hinge. And I read a specification somewhere that said a 5-inch tall hinge versus a 4.5-inch tall hinge gives the hinge the ability, somewhere in the range of 20 or 25% greater ability to carry or to manage the load of the door. So that's where knowing the height is first dimension is really important, because you can get into rectangular hinges really fast. A 5 by 5, a 5-inch wide hinge, well, that's important to know because that's going to be directly related to the door thickness. This client has 3080 doors that are 2.25 thick. A 5-inch wide hinge is going to be your hinge for that. You could do a 4.5 by 5 for a 2.25-inch thick door, but you wouldn't. You would do a 5 by 5. The only time you would use a wide throw, 4.5 by 5, 4.5 by 6, is when you're still dealing with an 1.75-inch thick door, but you have an unusual wall condition or casing condition where you need to be able to get that door out and around what you're installing it on. But when you have a 2-inch or a 2.25-inch thick door, you can put this on a 3-inch door if you want, a 3-inch thick door, but 2-inch or 2.25 would be typical because that will still give you a standard back set on the back of the door, the portion of the door that's not been mortised. So you can kind of see, if we were to stick with a 1/4-inch back set, you're going to do a 2.25-inch thick door. A 2-inch thick door would be good. You could make it work on an 1.75-inch thick door, but you're probably going to manipulate that back set to something closer to a 1/2-inch, something in that range. We talked about the ball bearings, the base material, the size. Now, NRP, you might have noticed there's a set screw that's there. And from the outside, you're not going to be permitted to get a tool onto that set screw. That's because this client's doors, while they are almost always unlocked because it's the entrance of of a country club, these are the main entry doors to the public area, they're almost never locked, but they do lock them. They can lock them. You simply don't want someone to be able to drive that pin out and be able to pull the door off and get in. And that's the role of the NRP in the part number, non-removable pin. So there are different methods of security on hinges. And NRP is by far the most common. And that means that in the pin itself, the hinge pin, if you were to drive that out, you'll see a groove cut in the perimeter of the pin so that when you seat the pin, tighten the set screw, what happens is that set screw seats into that groove. And take it from me, all but making it impossible to drive that pin out. I'm going to say that it is impossible to drive that pin out because I've tried, and the door's not coming off that way. It's just not. Is it possible, I suppose, to really drive that pin out and shear the head of the set screw? I guess it's possible. I found it to be not so. So NRP is the most common method of security on an exterior door that swings out. If you have such a door, you'll always want a security feature like NRP. You can also do a security stud where this is basically a hinge that's going to have a big piece of metal, a circular piece of metal about the size of a nickel and about a 1/4 inch or 3/8 thick, and a hole in the corresponding other leaf where that when that all closes, that big piece of metal is going to stick into the other side. And that's going to prevent you from driving the pin out but then tipping it out, tipping the door physically out. Okay. Nothing will keep these two hinge leaves from coming apart from each other if the pin is removed. But a security stud, and that's what that is called, by the way, even if you drove the pin out, you're still not going to separate those hinge leaves. An old carpenter's trick to create a security stud sort of feature is to take a 16-penny double head nail and carefully drive that into your jamb, and then in the heel edge of your door, the stile, drill a hole so that when the door closes, the double head of the nail goes right into that hole you've drilled. It's an old carpenter's trick. I don't know if it's old, but I know I was told about it by an old carpenter who had been doing it for decades. It's an inexpensive way to create a security pin scenario. You can take I remember he told me a story one time. He was, the first time he had seen it, he drove the pin out and he just couldn't figure out how in the devil that door wasn't coming out. Well, eventually got in another way, and then opened the door, and the mystery was revealed. He saw what that was, that 16-penny double head nail. Double head nails are used in construction to build forms where you can then quickly pull the nails out when you're done. That's what a double head is. Then, of course, the finish. 613, we discussed that at length. Architectural brass, bronze, you can do any finish onto this that you want. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, your polished, your satin. You can powder coat this if you want. The only time you're not going to use this for sure is on a fire-rated door. Fire-rated doors need to have a non-ferrous base material. Pardon me. Fire-rated doors cannot have a non-ferrous base material with the exception of stainless. You can have steel or stainless steel base material for your hinges, but never brass or bronze. That would not be permitted whatsoever at all. So be mindful of that. But back to the finishes, being PBB and a full capability of making custom, not custom, but unusual hinges. If you want polished bronze, which is a beautiful finish, they can do that. If you want antique nickel, they can do that. You want your polished brass, your satin bronze, your oil rubbed, your satin nickel, your satin chrome. They can do all of those finishes. I don't know if they can or cannot powder coat. I bet their factory can. But these unusual finishes are always a lead time. However, regarding lead times, I find that PBB has an incredible depth of product availability on the shelf. These 5x5 solid bronze hinges and oil rub finish, those are sitting on the shelf ready to go. Hundreds of them, in fact. Screws are included. You generally will always get all wood and all machine screws, or you'll get all machine and half wood. It's not a bad idea for you to specify, and it'll be in a complementary finish. It's not a bad idea, and in fact I would request that you specify what you expect in terms of screw combination so that there's no misunderstanding, so that you get what you want. Basically tell us, wood door, wood frame. Okay. Basically, make sure, I don't care about the machine screws, I'm not going to use them, but make sure I get enough wood screws to do the job, because you will generally get all machine, half wood. So specify. I'm not seeing where PBB is stating that they're going to give you, actually, okay, I am seeing in their catalog page, their catalog is telling us they're going to give us all machine and half wood screws. So be mindful of the fact that if you have wood door and wood frame, you're going to need some screws. So specify. AWS, all wood screws. AMS, all machine screws. Half wood, half metal. However you want to state that, feel free to do so. Hinges like this, and almost all hinges, are sold per hinge. Each hinge, not in a box, not as a set of 3. The quantity of hinges that will fit into a box is not related to the unit of measure. They happen to put 4 in this box. That's not unheard of. 3 is pretty typical for a box, but because there is no standard on how many hinges are sold or what the unit of measure is, it's just each. So order each. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the PBB products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm quite partial when it comes to PBB, and it's because they are the epitome of no nonsense. You send them an order and they ship out hinges. It's that simple. And they do it over and over and over again. And I look for ways to be able to send more business their way, because in the modern day and age that we live in, the Amazonification of our culture, nobody feels there's this general perspective that we no longer have tolerance for waiting for anything to happen. And PBB's been a well-oiled machine for a very long time. And when I need to get hinges shipped and I don't want to have to call 5 times for an order acknowledgement, and you companies know who you are, you're not getting that order. That's going to PBB. It's not only because of the quality of the hinge, but it's because the quality of their front end customer service people as well. Any questions on a PBB BB21 5x5 NRP 613 hinge or any other PBB product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.